Something is happening to our boys and young men that almost nobody has the guts to say out loud right now. And it's infuriating to anyone really paying attention. Our boys are growing more anxious, checking out in huge numbers, and are glued to their phones all day as a result. And worst of all, they're falling behind in school and falling behind in their lives. A whole generation of young men who just can't seem to find their stride right now. And it certainly isn't their fault. Of course, every expert, guru, and social commentator has a theory about how we ended up here. But there's one explanation hiding in plain sight. The one thing that was quietly pushed out of childhood years ago. And as it disappeared, the problems only got worse. It's the father's voice, his influence, his power, his example. That steady hand only a father can bring to his son. Because what disappeared wasn't love, and it wasn't the safety a mother gives in abundance. It was something only a father can give. And once you understand what was lost from our boys' lives, you begin to see the cost of an experiment nobody agreed to take part in. Let's find out what's going wrong. Here's what we're starting to figure out now. Somewhere along the way, it was decided that the very things fathers had always taught boys were suddenly dangerous and wrong. Risk, independence, toughness, the ability to fall down, get hurt, get embarrassed, get rejected, and get back up. Keep moving, and without somebody rushing in to rescue them. So, we needed a modern way to raise kids. Step in sooner, protect them more, remove the obstacles, manage every discomfort, be their greatest cheerleader. And above all else, make sure they never have to struggle for too long. And if a father pushed back on any of it, he was told he was outdated. He was too strict, too demanding, too masculine, and his ways were out of date. At first, the message was subtle, and then it was everywhere. It started early in the schools. It was all over the parenting books, in the counseling, on the television, and in the movies, in the family courts. And pretty soon, it became impossible to ignore. Nobody was asking the father to disappear exactly, just his ways were outdated. He should step back and be a little less of what fathers had always been. And after hearing that over and over for decades, lots of men started to second-guess instincts that had guided fathers for thousands of years, and went with the flow. So what we ended up with was a loss of that instinct to challenge, to be tough as a rite of passage, to be prepared for whatever will come. Letting a boy fail, letting him lose, get rejected, and letting him struggle long enough to discover that the world doesn't care about his feelings, that's the real job of a father. But somewhere along the way, we started treating those lessons as the problem. So we protected, and we protected, and we protected, without ever stopping to ask the one question that actually mattered. Protected for what? Because the world waiting outside the front door never changed, or never will. Reality never got any softer. The competition didn't disappear or get easier. Failure never stopped hurting. And the hard stuff is still out there and is still coming. The only difference now is that we act surprised when a boy reaches it completely unprepared. Because one day, you won't be there. One day, he walks out into that world alone. And as we all know, on that day, nobody is going to ask him how protected he felt, with the only question being asked is whether he can stand on his own 2 feet or not. Because nobody cares either way. For 30 years, we've treated protection and preparation as if they were the same thing, and as we now have discovered, they're not. Protection keeps a boy comfortable, but preparation makes him capable and strong. And a father has always known the difference instinctively. The Romans certainly did. In fact, they'd have told you that was the entire job. So let's take a look at what we mean next. Imagine a Roman village and a 6-year-old boy by his father's side. And his father has a massive knife in his hand, and it's real. This isn't a toy. It hasn't been rounded off at the tip or made safe by some warning label. A real blade with a real sharp edge. Across the yard, his mother's stomach drops. Every instinct in her is screaming, "He's too young." The father sees it on her face, and he hands the boy the knife anyway. "Careful," he says. "It's sharp, and it cuts deep." And then he does the thing that would terrify most modern parents today. He steps back. Just the boy, a blade, his father, and the very real possibility of getting it wrong and paying a severe price for doing so. The cut comes eventually, of course it does. A sharp sting, a bead of blood, a lesson burned into memory for good. But right there, in that exact moment, something else happens, something far more important than the cut. The boy looks down at the knife in his hand, then up at the man who trusted him with it. He wasn't protected from reality, he was introduced to it. And that's the moment that matters. The cut isn't the point, it's the trust, the responsibility, the respect. The unspoken message underneath it all from his father, "I think you're ready, son." That was the Roman father. His job was never to remove the danger. It was to teach a boy how to face it, to respect the danger. And in the Roman household, that works because by 12, that same boy might be handling the family's money, managing livestock, carrying messages across town, speaking to grown men who simply expected him to pull his weight. Now look around at what we do instead today. We lock up the knives and we remove the risks. We solve the problems before the child can raise up and solve them on their own. We lower every obstacle in their path. So we end up with young men reaching adulthood still waiting for someone to tell them how to handle life, that they can handle it, because they've been doing it all along. The Romans wouldn't call modern parenting love. They'd have called it the exact opposite. And there's also plenty of evidence to support the Roman point of view today. Stay with me, please. So imagine a little boy standing on a chair in the kitchen. He's been trying with all his might to pour some milk into his bowl for the last couple of minutes, and most of it isn't making it. The carton's too heavy. His hands keep slipping and sliding. There's milk all over the counter and dripping onto the floor everywhere. And across the room, his father watches and does absolutely nothing, even though every modern parenting instinct in him is screaming to step in. You know what? It's just easier if I do it myself. That'll save the mess, save the frustration and the tears. But he stays exactly where he is and watches. The boy grunts, adjusts his grip, tries again. More milk on the counter and floor. More frustration until, finally, the milk hits the target. The bowl fills up. The kitchen is wrecked and goes quiet. And the boy gets a look on his face that every father recognizes. It isn't happiness or relief. It's something way better than that. It's pride, the kind that can only be earned, the pride of completing a hard task. And this just isn't a feeling or a biased fatherly point of view. It's absolutely measurable. A researcher named Marty Rossman spent 25 years tracking children into adulthood, looking for the single biggest predictor of how their lives turned out. What he discovered was remarkably simple but profound. The predictor was nothing to do with IQ, money, the parent's education, or social status. It was responsibility. The children who were trusted with real jobs early in family life tended to become the adults who believed they could handle anything later in life. They grew up to be responsible and capable adults. Because confidence doesn't arrive after someone tells a boy he's capable. It arrives the moment he proves it to himself. And that's the part that's missing in modern parenting philosophy. A boy may hear words of praise, but deep down, he only trusts the evidence he knows to be true. The scraped knee, the hard task completed, the bike he finally learned to ride, the heavy bag he carried on his own, and the milk he poured himself. And a father understands this instinctively because he went through it with his father, a time-honored tradition that goes all the way back to our forefathers but has been missing later. It's why you don't rush in to rescue your boy anymore, no matter what age he is. Not because you don't care, but precisely because you do. And always remember, Every rescue quietly steals a chance for your boy to prove himself, to collect another piece of evidence, evidence that says, I can do hard things by myself, and I can handle whatever comes my way. And a boy who never gets to collect that evidence grows up knowing in his heart that something just isn't right, a head full of encouragement and a gut full of doubt. So let's do something about this now, together. Knowledge isn't power, action is. All things considered, this crisis didn't start when our boys became teenagers. It started years earlier. It began with the first time a boy reached for something difficult, and he was stopped, and someone stepped in. The first time he was protected from a lesson he needed, far more than he needed comfort or praise. And then it happened again, and again, and again. Until one day he's a grown young man, standing in front of a real challenge, a rejection, a failure, a hard conversation he can't avoid. And somewhere deep down, he just doesn't believe he can handle it, because he never had to before, because nobody ever gave him the chance to find out he could do it, that he was strong and extremely capable. Modern parenting philosophy robs young men of that, and shame on us all for letting this happen. That's the thing the Roman father understood, and the thing we've spent decades forgetting. A boy becomes what he's trusted to become. Trust him with nothing, and in the end, he'll trust himself with nothing. But trust him with something real, something that actually matters, and he will rise to the challenge every single time. That's what Marty Rossman found, buried in 25 years of data. It's what fathers knew in their bones for thousands of years before him. And it's the exact thing so many boys are quietly starving for right now. Not more protection, just a chance, a challenge, freedom to try, a reason to believe they're capable of something more. So, what must we fathers take back control of no matter what? It's this. It will be hard at first, but pick one thing you've been doing for your son because it's quicker, cleaner, or less stressful than watching him struggle. Then stop doing it. Hand it over. Bite your tongue and keep your hands in your pockets. Give him a problem to solve and deny him a rescue, unless it becomes unsafe, of course. Let him wrestle with it. Let him struggle. Let him get frustrated. And let him find his own way through. That's it in a nutshell. Always give him the chance. That's how young boys become capable, strong, responsible young men. And when he finally gets it, say nothing. No praise, no high fives. Just let him stand there, feel it. And a simple nod from you will mean everything to him. Because that feeling, I did that, by myself, is worth more than anything you could ever say to him, or all the praise in the world. You know this is true. That's how you build a boy, one step at a time into a man. Because one day, you will have to let go. Nothing you can do about that. The only question, the only one that matters, is whether by then he already knows he can stand on his own and knows in his heart he can handle anything. If this hit home, send it to a father who needs to hear it. He'll know why. If you know of any brilliant stories about this subject, please share them with me in the comments. I read them all. Because what a father does doesn't stop at childhood. The real test comes later, years later, when you're not there to save him. We've done a video on that, and if you want to know more, watch What Dads Do in the First 5 Years That Shapes the Next 50 next. I'll see you there, and thank you for watching to the end.